Our theme for these Sangha nights is entitled The Way to the Beyond for the Benefit of All. And what we're looking at is the Bodhisattva path, the path of the Buddhist practitioner who is seeking enlightenment not just for their own sake, but for the sake of all beings. So not just to become happier, but to be able to play a part in making the world a better place. Practicing in order to stop being part of the problem and start being part of the solution. And we've been looking at the Bodhisattva path in terms of what are called the 10 paramitas, which are here somewhere. In terms of the 10 paramitas, parameter could be translated as way beyond, the way to the beyond. The 10 ways to go beyond our limited self, to grow beyond our limited self. 10 ways to transcend the person that the path has made us to become more, the path has made us to become more what we could be. So we've looked at the first 3 of these. We've looked at generosity, we've looked at ethics, and we've looked at what's sometimes translated as patient forbearance, which we've seen means learning to put up with things that we can't change without letting that disturb our positive mental states, our positive states of mind. And now for the last few weeks, we've been looking at the 4th of these parameters. We've been looking at what is called in Sanskrit virya. Virya, which is probably here somewhere. You probably can't see that. No. 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 Virya, V-I-R-Y-A, virya. The same root as our words virtue, vigour, and virility. So maybe that gives you some sort of sense of what it means. Usually translated as effort or energy. So we've heard from Satyajoti what 3 weeks ago, what virya is and what it isn't. So for example, it isn't just any old energy. It isn't dashing around trying to get to the bottom of our to-do list. That's not what virya means. In fact, constant busyness doing worldly things like making money is seen as the opposite, the very opposite of virya, a gross form of laziness, because it's a distraction. It's a way of avoiding what's really important in life. We also heard from Satyajoti that we need virya to do the internal work of cultivating positive mental states and weakening negative mental states and emotions. We also heard that in order to have that energy available for those things, we need to really want to change. We need to really want to practice the Dharma. We need to want to grow and develop. It's not enough to think that we should. Because we human beings have always got plenty of energy, loads and loads of energy for doing what we want, for pursuing what we want. And we've got very, very little effective energy for doing what we think we ought. So a first step in having virya is to really want the ideals, really want to change, really want to become the sort of person we could be. Which is, we need a heartfelt desire to move towards the person we could become, a real love and longing for positive qualities, which in Buddhism is often called by the Sanskrit term dharma chanda, which means fascination, desire for the Dharma or for the truth. And we heard that means getting our deeper energies involved. It means getting our depths on our side. And we heard 3 short talks from people about their personal experience of stirring up their deep energies to practice the Dharma and make them available. And then last week, Bodhinaga introduced us to a traditional archetypal figure who embodies and symbolises the sort of energy that can smash through obstacles break out of old unhelpful ways of being. The figure of Vajrapani. Okay, so we've heard that we need to mobilize our energy to get anywhere with the spiritual life, but we also need to mobilize our energy to achieve anything positive in the world, to make things happen. We need to mobilize our energy to become the vivid, vibrant beings that we could become. Enlightenment is a state of great liberated energy. And freeing our energy is part of the path towards enlightenment. We need it, as it were, as a tool, but we also need it as just one of the aspects of enlightenment. And as I've said, we've all got plenty of energy. We've all got loads and loads of energy. But unfortunately, it's all too often it's tied up in knots so that we can't get at it, or it's blocked, or it's directed to quite basic drives. Pursuing a career, financial security, that particular other person that we want a relationship with, those sorts of things, seeking passing sensory pleasure. So not only is it not available for the spiritual life, but it actually takes us off in all sorts of directions away from the spiritual life. So there's an analogy for that many of you will have heard because we use it in our introductory course. That is, we're a bit like a horse and a rider. So the rider is the conscious, rational mind, and the rider thinks he's going over there, he or she is going over there. Enlightenment, a wonderful world, and the horse is going over there. And everybody else can see that the horse is going over there, but the rider is absolutely convinced that they're going towards a better world. Very often the horse is going towards a full nose bag, a warm stable, and attractive horses, of whichever sex its proclivity predisposes it to. And everybody else can see that, but the rider doesn't. So we need to learn to communicate with our horse. We need to get our depths on our side, those deep motivations that are represented by the horse. So this week I'd like to explore this theme of getting our depths on our side a bit further, getting our energies on our side. And I'd like to do this by introducing two figures, which many of you will come across, but some of you won't. Firstly, the figure of Padmasambhava, who first successfully introduced Buddhism to Tibet. And secondly, the figure of the Dakini, the sky dancer, a very evocative image of free, vibrant, joyful energy. The sort of joyful energy we could experience. So first of all, Padmasambhava. I'll sort of talk a bit about how Padmasambhava might appear, and I'll also tell a story. I'll tell a story which tells us a lot about what we need to do to have energy available for the spiritual life. So, okay, Padmasambhava, there was a real person, Padmasambhava, I believe, a real person who first successfully introduced Buddhism to Tibet. But whole levels of myth have grown up around that episode, a mythic dimension. So the Padmasambhava we'll be talking about is, I think, probably more an archetypal figure than a historical person. He's a figure who represents deep energies in our psyche that we can tap into, a figure who can sort of wake up our energies, rather than a figure from a history textbook. So, yeah, first thing to say is Padmasambhava is not your usual Buddhist figure, okay? We usually expect our Buddhist figures to emphasize the softer qualities, compassion, love, serenity is the one that people often focus on. Padmasambhava certainly displays those, and in fact he appears in quite a lot of different guises. But what really stands out about him are qualities like strength and energy, and even challenge. And these are also needed. I mean, these are part of developing ourselves spiritually. They were certainly needed to introduce the Dharma to the barbarian land of Tibet. They are going to be needed to introduce the Dharma effectively to the barbarian lands of the West. And they are needed to, as it were, convert the barbarian hinterland of ourselves. We're a bit like a country where the Dharma has got a bit of a foothold, but there's plenty of forces, plenty of interest groups that would rather not see it sort of take root particularly strongly. So what Padmasambhava needed to do to introduce the Dharma to Tibet has also got related to what we need to do to introduce the Dharma here and to ourselves. So Padmasambhava takes many forms. We've got a couple of forms here, one of which you can see and one of which you probably can't actually. Can you see this one? It's got this amazing quality of shining so that nobody can see it. I'll describe this figure, even if you can't see it. So the one we're most familiar with is Padmasambhava sitting in what's called King of Sahur posture. So he's got one leg, as it were, in the lotus position, but one leg is stepping down. It's a gesture. It's called a position of royal ease, I think. It's relaxed but alert. There's this royal quality to it. So he's this kingly figure. He's at ease, but also very energetic and active. And that energy is also conveyed by an awful lot of swirling. There's an awful lot of swirling going on, swirling robes, swirling streamers. Padmasambhava is looking at us with a gesture, a facial expression which is described as a wrathful smile. I can't do a wrathful smile. So. He's smiling, but he's also challenging. He's challenging us to step out of our comfort zones. He's smiling at what we could be. He's challenging us to be brave and adventurous and to change. Challenging us to overcome our weaknesses. And at the same time, smiling at the person he sees we could be. He's got long blue-black hair and gold earrings in his ears. In fact, he looks more like a pirate than a Buddhist monk, to be honest. He's got a hat with a vulture's feather in it because vultures, he's fond of burial grounds where vultures gather, and the vulture flies the highest of all birds. In his left hand he holds surely not, it's the top of a skull. It's the skull cup, and it seems to be full of a liquid. It looks a bit like blood. So there's this loads of death imagery. You can't really sort of ignore Padmasambhava. If you look at an image of Padmasambhava, there's loads of stuff in there which sort of gets at the unconscious somehow. It's a bit, it's sort of, what should we say? Yeah, you can't ignore sort of images of death like skulls and blood, but actually the blood turns out to be the nectar of bliss. The bliss of stepping beyond our self-imposed limitations, beyond our limited selfhood, into this exhilarating world of infinite potential. In the crook of his left arm, he's got a sort of, what should we call it, a staff, a bit like magician's staff, a bit like the staff that Gandalf holds in the Lord of the Rings. So Padmasambhava is a magician. He transforms things. He transforms people. He transforms things. He transforms energies from something negative into something positive. From something that stops us from making progress into something that helps us to make progress. What else do magicians do? Magicians tame spirits. He tames spirits, gets them on his side. So it's like a magic wand with which he transforms nasty things into princes and princesses. And there's lots of things about his trident. His trident's got 3 prongs. His staff has got 3 prongs. In fact, it's a trident. Tridents, we associate tridents with the devil. Poseidon, the king of the seas, because tridents can be used to poke the depths, fish out the sort of things that are in the depths and have a look at them. The staff is made out of the metal from a meteorite, apparently. It comes from another realm. It comes from another dimension. And it's got all these swirling streamers on it. And these streamers symbolize success. So they represent attainment, spiritual and worldly. So Padmasambhava is successful. He's successful spiritually. But also in the world, he's a winner. He succeeds where others have failed. As we develop spiritually, we get our energies on stream. We leave the self-defeating parts of ourselves behind. So we become successful, able to make things happen. Not making things happen to look after our own worldly interests, but to make things happen for a higher cause, perhaps the highest cause of all. So the streamers of success swirl from his staff in the breeze of another dimension, and they sort of give the impression of energy, of celebration. We fly flags and streamers when we're celebrating. And then, very disturbingly, he's got 3 severed heads on his staff. Once again, difficult not to have some sort of emotional response to 3 severed heads. But these 3 severed heads, there's all this imagery of death. What scares us most, it summons up our energy. We need to sort of die to our old selves to be reborn as something new and better. And these severed heads represent old selves, if you like, that have been left behind so that we can grow into something new. In his right hand, he holds the Vajra, which Vadanya talked about last week, the ultimate weapon, if you like, of power, in this gesture of subduing demons, and we'll come to that in a moment. He's often called the Vajra Guru, the guru of the Vajra. Guru in the sense not of being so much a teacher as of being somebody who can transform parts of ourselves. So that's what he looks like. We've also got another image of Padmasambhava here, which perhaps I'll return to in a minute. It's Padmasambhava subduing a demon, which comes into our story that we're going to talk about. So the most sort of, should we say, the real crux of the myth of Padmasambhava, the story of Padmasambhava, is the story about how he established Buddhism in Tibet. And we can learn a lot from this about how we can establish Buddhism in ourselves. So first of all, I think it was in the 8th century, quite late, a lot of other countries around about had all become firmly Buddhist. And Buddhism represented civilization, it represented everything that was good. And the king of Tibet wanted to establish Buddhism in Tibet. So he invited a good, gentle, scholarly Buddhist monk called Shantarakshita to come and set up a temple, a place called Samye in Tibet. But what happened when Shantarakshita, this gentle, scholarly man, this thoroughly good man, when he started trying to build this temple at Samye, he organised everything, got the people working. The king gave him the resources he needed. But to his absolute amazement, he found that whatever he and his co-human workers built in the daytime, all seemed to get knocked down at night, and the stones just scattered everywhere. It seems that beings were coming out of the depths, beings were coming out of the lakes and the caves and the depths. Nagas, serpent-like beings, demons, were coming out of the deepest places and knocking down all the walls and scattering everything. So the humans and the good, gentle, scholarly Shantarakshita are building a temple in the daytime. The daytime represents, if you like, the conscious mind, the rational conscious mind. It represents what's nice and rational. And in the daytime, the temple seems to be coming along nicely. But then at night, the nighttime, it represents what's darker, what's unconscious, less conscious, more magical, more primeval. and the demons and nagas that come out at night are the forces that operate in the darkness, in the unconscious. They're the horse, if you like, rather than the rider. And at night, out of sight of the conscious rational intellect, out come the non-human beings, out come the nagas from the depths, and they knock down everything that has been built by the nice rational humans in the daytime, under the guidance of the good, gentle Shantarakshita. So we could see the demons and the nagas and the whatnot as representing the energies of Tibet that didn't want to be converted to the Dharma, that didn't want Tibet to become a Buddhist country, that didn't want to practice, that thought that was going to spoil their fun, thought that was going to get in the way of their agenda. So the demons and the nagas, if you like, represent the horse that's going over there, determinedly, even though the conscious rational intention is to go over there. So yeah, if we take this building of Samye as a metaphor for our attempts to build a saner, wiser person, I think we might, probably many of us will have some experience of this, that these are sort of energies we have to harvest to convert to the Dharma. So we all have times, I think, when we practice the Dharma, when we seem inspired, we seem to be getting along nicely, really well with our practice. Our temple at Samye is coming along really well. The walls are doing very nicely. Then, for some reason, all our old habits seem to come back. We find ourselves apparently compelled to do things that sort of just don't help at all. We find ourselves slipping back into old ways. And all those wonderful states that we seem to have managed to get just seem to vanish completely. I mean, I've come back from retreats and thought, that's it. Done it. Done it. Sorted. Come back on the Sunday, yes, it's just, by about Tuesday, it's like, that's something, what's on the internet, what's, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Those old habits, those old patterns, they're the energies that we need to convert. And when that happens, we tend to feel a bit puzzled sometimes. There's in the text that we've been quoting, the Bodhicharyavatara, Shantideva says, what is it that dwells inside me? What is it that can make me do these things? And that's quite a common experience. St. Paul, even in other traditions, St. Paul said, the evil that I would not do, that I do. The good that I would do, that I do not do. It's sort of like, we've got our ideals, we've got what we want to be, but there's stuff inside us that doesn't agree, actually. It does not agree. And when that happens, we tend to feel puzzled. Because we think we are our conscious minds. We think we are our conscious minds. I mean, psychologists have been telling us now for 100 and God knows how many years that there's this thing called the unconscious. But the thing about the unconscious is, hey, it's unconscious. We don't know about it. We don't know about it. So a lot of people don't even believe it's there. It just happens to be obvious to everybody else. But we don't know we've got an unconscious. But the unconscious can dominate us. The world is not a nice, rational sort of place, and we are not nice, rational people. There's depths there that we're unaware of. The world is a wild and magical place still. I mean, we may have paved it over and installed streetlights, but underneath there's still the old stuff. So Shantarakshita starts to realise this. And he tells the king, he says, well, I'm sorry, I can't do it. I can't do it. I know someone who can. And that someone is Padmasambhava. And Padmasambhava, as we've seen, is very, very different from Shantarakshita. Shantarakshita is gentle and kind and scholarly. Well, okay, Padmasambhava is also gentle and kind, but he can be other things as well. Padmasambhava is not what most people expect a Buddhist to be. Okay? Although his fundamental motive is compassion, the well-being of the world, the liberation of people, although he's operating from metta, he has this wrathful smile. He has lots of rather energy that can be experienced as rather fierce if we don't want to change, which can be scary. He is wild, he's wacky, and distinctly unrespectable. Distinctly unrespectable. Respectable people are not going to like Padmasambhava. He's a magician. He's a shaman. He's a warrior. He's a dancer. He's a lover. A lot of people who think of themselves as Buddhists would thoroughly disapprove of Padmasambhava if they ever met him. They would find him much too red-blooded and dangerous, and they might also be a bit threatened by the fact that he was actually asking them to change rather than talking about changing. But Padmasambhava is exactly what's needed to build the temple, to get the job done. And some of his energy and attitude is what we need as well, to build our inner temple, to really become more than we've got used to allowing ourselves to be. So the king sends a delegation to ask Padmasambhava to come to Tibet. And to persuade him, he gives a gift of a fortune in gold. So he sends some emissaries with a fortune in gold to pay Padmasambhava to come to Tibet. And at this time, Padmasambhava is living in India in cremation grounds, the places where they burn the bodies. And he's dancing, he spends his time dancing with Dakinis, wild female embodiments of joyful energy. We'll return to that. So the first thing Padmasambhava does is he throws the king's offering of gold away. It's all gold dust, and he just throws it away. Lets it go. Which, of course, absolutely horrifies the king's ambassadors. This is not what sensible people do, okay? This is not respectable. Effectively, he is saying, your values are not my values. I don't value what you value. Gold is what sensible, respectable people value. They worship it, in fact. The equivalent would be burning £1 million or something like that. So it's an act of blasphemy. It's horrifying. It's a blasphemy against the God of sensible people. But then to put the ambassadors back in a good mood, he magically generates a whole load more gold. But this is a different sort of gold. This is the gold of inner wealth. So he magics up a whole lot of inner gold, if you like, which is symbolised by the outer gold, and then he goes to a deep lake where the king of the Nagas lives, the king of the depths, if you like. And he offers it to the king of the Nagas, the king of the beings of the depths who are contributing to knocking down the walls. So he gets the king of the Nagas on his side. He gets the Nagas on his side. He shows the Nagas that he's got something to offer, which is better than what came before. So he doesn't just try and stop the creatures of the depths knocking the temple down. He actually tries to get the creatures of the depths on his side, helping. So he sets about converting the demons and the nighttime beings and the Nagas to get them on his side and actually help in the building. And he has some pretty weird ways of doing that. So some, like the Naga king, he persuades because they want some of the riches that he is offering, the inner riches that he's offering. They realise they'll be better off following Padmasambhava. Some he just shows who is boss. They recognise him as superior to themselves. They're scared of his energy and power. And some he makes love to and gets them on his side that way. So in his various ways, he gets these energies on his side. And they help him building. And they build Samye at night while the humans build it in the day. So every day people come out and think, this is getting on magically. It's growing so fast. And of course, that's what happens when our energies are really flowing, when our deep energies are really flowing. Things just happen almost spontaneously. They seem to be happening spontaneously. So yes, he transforms these coarse, scary energies into helpers and protectors. And Tibetan Buddhism is full of images of weird, wonderful beings who have been actually converted and become protectors of the Dharma and helpers of the Dharma. Okay, so we need to remember that we are trying to build Samye, the temple, in ourselves. And these creatures exist as much in us as they do in the darkness of the Tibetan night. We need their energy. We need to get them on our side. These are our energies. Okay, the mythic figures we're talking about, they represent the energies of Tibet, but they also represent energies in us. These forces that we call lower are where a lot of our energy is tied up. We can't cut them off and ignore them. We have to work with them to get them more interested in higher things, to get them aligned to our purpose. So how do we convert them? How does this relate to our practice? How do we go about converting demons, if you like? To do that, we have to become the sort of person maybe that Padmasambhava is. Instead, just backtrack a little bit. Got this other image. Demon. Padmasambhava. Looking at it with his Vajra. So he's looking at it actually very fondly. If you come and have a look at it afterwards, you'll see that he's smiling. He's actually looking at this demon, which is quaking and offering itself to him. He's actually looking at it with a smile of fondness, but at the same time, he is actually taming it. It's a very interesting tanka, which I believe belongs to, yes. Mogalangsa. I'm having a senior moment. I've only known you for how long? 20 years. I've only known you for 30 years, but I've forgotten your name. So yes, we need to. How do we become a bit like Padmasambhava, who can convert the demons, get the darker forces on our side? Where did he get his spiritual gold from that he offered to the Darkinis? So to get an idea of the sort of person, how we become the sort of person that Padmasambhava was, it might be useful to look at what he had been doing in India before he was invited to Tibet. Okay, so Sangha says he spent a great deal of time in cremation grounds in various parts of India. According to the rumours that circulated at the time, he lived there with the Darkinis, singing, dancing, and drinking wine. Singing, expression of joy. Dancing, expression of joy. Drinking wine, it must be symbolic. Of course. And he's dancing with the Darkinis. He's dancing with the Darkinis. Naked, dancing, ecstatic female figures. Symbols of completely free, liberated energy. The name Darkini, I gather, means something like Skywalker. I don't know if Luke is that. I don't know whether that's where they got the idea. I think it means one who moves in the sky, one who walks in the sky. But they're often described as sky dancers, because dancing is what they do. He's living there with the Darkinis, living in cremation grounds with the Darkinis, singing, dancing, and drinking wine, which obviously is symbolic. It doesn't just mean he was having a party, although making life a joyful business is an important part of it, actually. Let's have a look at a particular Darkini to see what they might mean. A figure called Vajradakini. So how do we describe Vajradakini? I'm afraid I don't have a picture. We don't have one that's at all bigger than about that. For a start, she's completely naked except for a necklace of skulls. And she is dancing ecstatically. Her body is made of radiant red light. Radiant red light. Her hair is long, matted, and dishevelled. And it streams out behind her as she dances. She is said, and this is a tradition, not me, she is said to have large breasts because she experiences bliss herself and gives bliss to others. That's the tradition. In her right hand, she holds what's called a Vajra chopper. It's a very strange thing. It's actually used for cutting up dead bodies in the sky when they're sort of cut up and offered to the vultures. So it's an instrument used for dismembering dead bodies, which symbolises that she's constantly cutting away, if you like, the old dead self, chopping up any stuck patterns from the past, constantly chopping up the person she used to be, so that she can be totally new and vibrant and alive. So I'm not going to do a Vajradharkini impersonation, I don't think. So she's dancing, she's got her Vajra thing, and she's drinking, again from a skull cup full of this red liquid, just as Padmasambhava was doing. The liquid being actually the nectar of bliss, the bliss of emptiness, the bliss that comes when we're completely liberated from all those stuck things like fear and embarrassment and anxiety, all the stale old ideas of who we are and what we could be. So this is the bliss of fearless, aroused energy that is constantly liberating itself from old past stuck ways of being, constantly reinventing itself, constantly new, flowing. So there's a few things I'd like to just sort of point out the significance of with the Darkini. For a start, the Darkini is naked. And this symbolises that she is completely open. There are no coverings. She's completely open, completely honest, completely genuine. She has nothing to hide. Any hint of pretext or putting up barriers so that others won't see us and the Darkinis lose interest in us. Then the Darkini is red. And red is the colour of passion and emotional arousal. Arousal. She represents the state of complete emotional engagement in the spiritual life, the state in which our energies are completely aroused. Sangha says of her, this is why her hair is dishevelled. She doesn't care about decorum, about what people might think of her. She just abandons herself. Sometimes it is said that the Darkini throws herself into the spiritual life, just as a passionate woman throws herself into the arms of her lover. She represents the spiritual ideal of self-abandonment. So the Darkini throws herself in. She's totally committed, gives herself completely. So Darkinis thrive on commitment. They aren't interested in anyone who isn't totally committed, anyone who's playing it safe and worrying about the consequences and keeping escape routes. Darkinis are off. Then she wears a necklace of skulls. So these skulls, if you like, again, they're previous selves. They're old, outdated ideas about ourselves, old psychological conditioning, old patterns. Sangha says of this necklace of skulls, the necklace represents the vicious circle of self-created and self-induced problems in which almost all of us live. The vicious circle of self-created and self-induced problems in which almost all of us live. All those knots that we create in our energies that stop us really living. So she has left all these self-created problems completely behind. All the conditionings they arise from are liberated, they're gone. They're just skulls hanging around her neck. So all the energy that was tied up with those old stuck patterns has been liberated. All that energy has been released. She's dancing. So at one level, we could see the Darkinis as representing the freedom and the bliss of the enlightened mind that has left the stale old limited self behind. But at a lower level, maybe more our own level, we could see them as our own emotional energies, which are usually blocked or stuck in various ways because of our conditioning and the way we live. The Darkini represents what those energies could be like if we were liberated. So we could say that Padmasambhava succeeds where others fail because he dances with the Darkinis. His energies are liberated. He can take part in this joyful dance. So how can we dance with the Darkinis? That would be the question. How can we become more the sort of person who's got that spiritual gold to offer. I think there are a few things we should consider. And I have to say at this point, I'm not saying I practice all these, okay? I'm not saying I do this, and this, be like me, I do all this. But I do know enough from my life that when I've done these sorts of things, this is when the Darkinis dance with me. Okay? So I'm pretty sure of this. First of all, Darkinis are naked. So we need to make, if we want to dance with the Darkinis, we need to make it a practice to be open, to be transparent to others. We need to find people we can be completely open and authentic with. We need to develop that sort of relationship with people. And then we need to take that risk of being open, being transparent, taking off our mask. Not hiding. Darkinis are not remotely interested in people who hide behind a mask. Okay, second, the red colour. Darkinis are vibrant red, colour of passion and love, because they love what they are doing. They love what they are doing. And we all want what we love, and we succeed in getting what we want. When we love something, we pursue it with energy. We've all got plenty of energy for pursuing what we really love. So we need to do the things we love. We need to do the things we love. We need to do the things that put us in touch with beauty, the things that give us energy and delight. If these things have nothing to do with the Dharma, well, maybe we need to find ways to connect them with the Dharma. But we need to do them anyway, as long as they're at least ethically neutral. If they're ethically distinctly unskillful, which, maybe they will be, we need to find ways of perhaps seeking the same thing in a different way. Seeking the same thing in a more skillful way. But we do need to be honest about what they really are, what we really love. If it's football, it's football. As I said, I think I said, if it's punk, don't pretend it's Puccini. That was my little bon mot from a previous talk on this subject. Because if it's punk and we listen to Puccini instead, it's not going to work. We have to sort of try and move it, as it were. So that's something else. We need to do what we love, even at the cost of taking risks, and I'll come back to that. And lastly, well, not lastly, thirdly, Darkinis live in cremation grounds, okay? Cremation grounds in India at the time of Padmasambhava were scary places. There were bits of half-burned dead bodies lying around. There were wild bogs and jackals and vultures and rats. Mad people and the strange outcasts of society took refuge in cremation grounds. It doesn't take much imagination as well to imagine that there might be quite an atmosphere around a cremation ground, that you might imagine there were ghosts and spirits in a cremation ground. To be alone in a cremation ground at night would have been a scary business. That's where they live. Darkinis live in scary places. Darkinis face fear. Darkinis are not afraid of fear. So Darkinis face fear and use the energy of fear. They transform the energy of fear. To dance with the Darkinis, we need to face our fear, rather than doing what we often do, which is to avoid what scares us. To avoid what scares us by staying in our comfort zones, by doing the same old things over and over again, by staying in the safe situations, not doing anything new or different. So Sangha uses the image of the cremation ground as a symbol for what he calls the crucial situation. He says cremation grounds represent crucial situations, situations in which we must either discover new resources in ourselves or collapse and fail, run away. In other words, cremation grounds, crucial situations are challenges, but they're the sorts of challenge that makes us, we have to step into bigger shoes to deal with them. We have to discover new resources in ourselves. The sort of challenge that we're not actually sure we can handle. Taking on a new big responsibility. Maitridasa becoming chair of Sheffield Buddhist Centre. Giving a public talk when you don't like doing so. For those that know about this, doing a karuna appeal, a fundraising appeal, crucial situation for most people. We have to let go of our fear of looking a fool, let go of our fear of rejection, find completely new ways of relating to people. A lower level, anything that feels a bit scary can be a cremation ground. So if you've never done it before, going on retreat could be a cremation ground. But the Darkinis come out and dance with us when we step out of our comfort zones and take risks. So another point is that Darkinis give themselves completely. They aren't interested in dancing with anyone who's half-hearted, who isn't totally committed. They're not interested in people who are playing safe and worrying about consequences and keeping escape routes. So just to sum all that up, those are a few ideas about how to get the Darkinis dancing with us. Just to sum it up, to get the Darkinis to dance with us, we need to be open and honest as much as we can. We need to be open and honest as much as we can. Don't hide behind a mask. Find relationships where we can do that. Take risks in revealing ourselves to others. Darkinis dance with people who are willing to be naked. Then we need to do the things we love. If possible, to connect the things we love with our Dharma life. We need to do the things that put us in touch with beauty and joy. If it's possible, we need to make what we love our work. Prioritize that over financial security. Darkinis feed on joy and beauty and enthusiasm. To get the Darkinis to dance with us, we need to welcome challenges. We need to take on challenges, even seek out challenges. Welcome crucial situations that require us to grow, even if they scare us. We need to beware of seeking comfort rather than challenge. And we need to do different things we've never done before. The Darkinis, they dance in the bracing blue sky, not in comfortable living rooms. To get the Darkinis to dance with us, we need to practice commitment. We need to practice giving ourselves completely to situations. We need to use some wisdom about what we commit to. I've given this advice before and people have committed to really stupid things and then said, but you told me I should commit. Yeah, but not to that. We need to use some wisdom about what we commit to. But a life where we don't commit to what is most important to us, a life where we keep our options open, is so boring and sterile that the Darkinis will be off and a mile away. Darkinis dance with the hot, give themselves completely, and they dance with people who will join them in doing that. So to sum it all up, there's one thread that I think runs through quite a lot of those things, which is take risks. Don't seek a life of security, but take some risks. Darkinis live in scary places. If we keep safe, we're too boring for them. They're only interested in us if our life is a bit of an adventure, not if it's a coach tour for the elderly. We often put up with a life that deadens our emotional energies and doesn't give our higher ideals any space, because to change would be risky. Maybe changing our boring life would be risky. Maybe something bad might happen. But if we don't change a boring life, something bad will definitely happen. We will become deadened and stale and tired, and the joy will go out of life. We'd actually be much better to be poorer and more insecure, but alive and engaged. That would feel a whole lot better than being safe and stuck. And anyway, there's no such thing as safety. We are blobs of protoplasm clinging to a rock which is hurtling through space at great speed, and we want to be safe. A life which is deadening but safe is not going to work. Darkinis aren't interested, so we need to take some risks. We need to take some risks to do what we really love. And then we might find that the Nagas and demons help us in ways that we could never have imagined. And we might find that the Darkinis come out and dance with us in the sky.